Week number 12 of the 2025 fantasy football season kicks off in just a few hours. In today's video, I'm going to help you guys set your lineups at the running back position by breaking down my top 40 running back rankings and tiers for week number 12 of the 2025 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, if you guys do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that if you are new to the channel, that you make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into my top 40 running back rankings and tiers for week number 12 of the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with my must-start running back ones inside of my tier number 1. We got Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams, James Cook, Travion Henderson, Kyren Williams, Rico Dowdle, as well as Derrick Henry. Christian McCaffrey is at the 1 spot this week, going up against his old team, the Carolina Panthers, in the 13th best matchup for running backs on a per-game basis. Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor are basically the RB1 and RB2 every single week, interchangeably depending on the matchup. This week, Christian McCaffrey has the far superior matchup. He has been the RB1 in 2 of his last 3 games. The guy has just been dominating 50 Shades of Grey style all season long. Just 1 game this year outside of the top 12, scoring 3 touchdowns last week in Arizona up against the Cardinals. I am 100% confident in him in this spot. Again, like I said, the 13th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. Now, Jonathan Taylor has a significantly worse matchup, as the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the best defenses against running backs in all of fantasy football. In terms of the matchup, the Chiefs allow the 26 most points to running backs on a per game basis, but when it comes to Jonathan Taylor, I don't care at all what the matchup is. In 2 of his last 3 games, this guy has been the running back 1 in fantasy football, just like Christian McCaffrey. He's coming out the bye week. I expect the offense to be ready for the great Chiefs run defense, and I expect Jonathan Taylor to run a train, even if this is a matchup that is far from, the best. Far from the best, to say the very least. Now we got Bijan Robinson going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. In terms of a matchup, this is going to be the 15th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. Bijan Robinson has been kind of up and down this season, mostly consistent, but he has had a couple of slip-ups, especially over the last 4 weeks. He's been the RB4 last week up against the Panthers, the week prior the RB24 in Germany, then the RB7 and the RB36 in full PPR, but this is a great matchup for him to continue playing very well. The biggest issue is losing Michael Penix and losing Drake London. Without having Drake London, the offense isn't going to be able to percolate as well. They're not going to be able to move the football as much, but Bijan Robinson could be a guy that could see 7 checkdowns in this game from old man Kirk Cousins, Cole's Cash Kirk. So I fully expect Bijan Robinson to have a solid game even without his QB1. Then we got Jahmyr Gibbs going up against the New York Football Giants at home in Detroit. In terms of a matchup at the running back position, is the 3rd best for running backs. Dan Campbell just needs to get out of his own way. Honestly, the reason why they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles last week was largely because of the aggressiveness that Dan Campbell had. If he just played things a little bit safer, then honestly, I think the Detroit Lions probably go out and win that game. Obviously, if Jared Goff played better as well, they would have had a much easier time. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs has been a top 10 running back in back-to-back games. We saw in week 10 up against the Commanders, a soft serve cupcake matchup for running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs scored 3 touchdowns. That is certainly on the menu in this game. He could definitely score 3 touchdowns yet again. Again, with all these guys inside the top 5, you are really playing them regardless of the matchup. Then we got Saquon Barkley going up against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. Now, this year has been rough for Saquon Barkley. Back-to-back games outside of the top 18 at the running back position. He's currently the RB11 on the season in full PPR, and despite the fact that they're force-feeding the guy the ball, 26 carries last week, 22 carries the week prior, he has been far from successful. But if there ever was a game to kind of get the monkey off the back, if there ever was going to be a game for Saquon Barkley to figure it out, turn back the clock to last season where he was absolutely insane in the membrane, it would be up against the Dallas Cowboys, a defense that allows the 8th most points to running backs on a per game basis. Then we got Javonte Williams going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Javonte Williams, despite the fact that he had a pretty good game watching it, in terms of the eye test, he was 22 for 93, as well as 1 reception on 1 target for 0 yards, but he didn't end up scoring that touchdown, thus only finishing as the RB26 last week. In terms of a matchup for running backs, this is the 14th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. The Eagles defense has definitely definitely looked a lot better as of recently, but we did see Javonte Williams absolutely pipe the Philadelphia Eagles in week number 1. He had 20 fantasy points, 2 touchdowns as the RB5, and we've seen the highs of Javonte Williams. The Dallas Cowboys offense looked immaculate last week up against the Raiders, and we all know that this game could be very high scoring. Then we got James Cook going up against the Houston Texans in Houston tonight on Thursday Night Football. This is the 25th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. So while I am nervous about the matchup, we just saw James Cook pipe down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense as the running back number 7. So while James Cook definitely doesn't feel as safe as he normally would, based on what we have seen this season, James Cook is a guy that you're basically just locking into the top 12 every single week. Then we got Travion Henderson of the New England Patriots going up against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, a Cincinnati Bengals team that's looking like they're going to shed Joe Flacco, and it's going to be Joe Burrow time over there in Cincinnati. The Bengals are the best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. Now, my issue with Travion Henderson, why he's not ranked as like a top 5 running back, is because the fact that Ramondre Stevenson feels like he is going to return. Back-to-back top 4 finishes for Travion Henderson, and I know damn well Travion Henderson could be the RB1 in this game, but, and there's a big but, shout out to Kim Kardashian, it does very much concern me that Ramondre Stevenson is going to take too much of a piece of the pie to where Travion Henderson could end up being a big fat bust in this game, even though we have just seen him put up such great numbers. He has 5 total touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, so the ability is there, but the fact that Ramondre Stevenson is coming back does worry me because it seems like deep down, Mike Vrabel has a hard-on for Ramondre Stevenson. Then we got Kyren Williams going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home in LA. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense allows the 6th most points to running backs on a per-game basis, so you have to feel good about Kyren Williams this week. There's another one of these running backs that just lives inside the end zone, 4 total touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. The LA Rams might have the best offense in the NFL. They are a certified wagon, and in such a great matchup up against the Buccaneers, I expect him to find the end zone in this spot. Then we got, you might just get hit with the Rico Dowdle going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, based upon his start to the season, when he became the starting running back on the Carolina Panthers, it has been a bit disappointing his last 2 games because his first start, week 5 up against the Dolphins, he's the RB1. Week 6 up against the Cowboys, he gets the start again, then he's the RB2. After that, they try to reintroduce Chuba Hubbard into the offense. Obviously, that doesn't go very well. And then they turn things back to Rico Dowdle. He's the RB2 up against the Packers in Lambeau in week 9. Then over the last 2 games, he's been the RB15 and the RB17. But a small skid still scoring 15 PPR points in both games is not going to sway me away from him. He is clearly the best player on this offense, or the 2nd best player on this offense, based upon how well T-Mac looked last week, the 18th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. Rico just has to be ranked as a RB1 at this point in the season. Then we got Derrick Henry going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, with Lamar Jackson back, I have felt a whole lot better about Derrick Henry, running back 14-22 in the RB8 last week up against a tough Cleveland Browns defense. Derrick Henry is the kind of guy that could score 3 touchdowns this week, and it wouldn't surprise me. He could score 30 fantasy points, and it would not surprise me at all. So with his safety meter being a whole lot higher with Lamar Jackson now back in the fold in the 12th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis, I expect fireworks here as a top 12 back on the week. Now we move into the tier number 2 running backs this week, the must-start high-end running back 2s with Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift, as well as Jaylen Warren. Travis Etienne is listed as questionable for the week, been dealing with the shoulder injury. I would expect him to play, though. Obviously, if anything changes, then these rankings are going to be adjusted. If you are on the Patreon, I update my rankings all the time. So if Etienne was to, be out, then other running backs will move up the rankings, and he will obviously be taken out of the rankings. Going up against the Arizona Cardinals this week in Arizona. In terms of a matchup for running backs, this is the 9th best matchup for running backs on a per-game basis. Travis Etienne has been a top 13 running back in 3 straight games. He has scored 3 total touchdowns over that stretch. He scored 2 touchdowns last week up against the Chargers defense. So when a guy is running as hot as Travis Etienne, we talk about this all the time, it's the NBA Jam rule, right? When a player is on fire, you want to keep rocking with them, and Travis Etienne is the perfect example of that. Then Then we got DeAndre Swift going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home in Chicago. In terms of a matchup at the running back position, this is the 24th best matchup. Now, DeAndre Swift has fallen off ever since returning ever so slightly because Kyle Monangai has been the guy that has gotten lucky enough to find the end zone, but DeAndre Swift is still very clearly the lead back on the team, right? You don't have to worry about Monangai magically seeing 20 plus touches in this game. Last week, DeAndre Swift was 21 carries for 90 yards, 1 target, no receptions. He scored just 9 fantasy points, but I feel like the pendulum is much more likely to swing back his way to where he is scoring the touchdown, to where he is finishing as a reliable high-end running back too for the rest of the season. I mean, in week 10, up against the Giants, he didn't score and was the RB16, so I'm not panicking at all. Then we move to Jaylen Warren, the other running back in this game, currently listed as questionable. Return to practice on Thursday. Warren had missed practice to open the week on Wednesday. He should be on track to be good to go in this game. So if he does play, obviously anyone that had Kenneth Gainwell that was maybe hoping Jaylen Warren missed so that they had another running back, doesn't seem like that will be the case. Now, Jaylen Warren didn't play the whole game last week. He's the RB32 in a wet dream spot up against the Bengals. Obviously, that sucks ass, but he got hurt. I'm not going to hold that against him. Now he gets to go up against a Chicago Bears defense that currently allows the 16th most points to running backs on a per-game basis. Jaylen Warren should realistically be a mid-range RB2 or high-end RB2 most weeks, with the upside of being a top 12 guy. Very reliable, all reliable for your fantasy team. You got to be rocking with him here in this spot. Now we move into the mid-range running back twos by RBs 15 and 16 with You Got a Friend in Me, Woody Marks, and Quinshawn Judkins. Before we break down the running backs in this tier and the rest of the running backs in today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog, sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll receive a free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as you play $5 on the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. How does the pick'em work? It is incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but they all have to hit, so make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. So back here into tier number 3 with Woody Marks and Quinshawn Judkins, it would appear to me that Woody Marks is the clear lead back on this team at this point. It kind of seems like Nick Chubb has fallen out of favor, and that Woody Marks will continue to dominate the snap share, dominate the touches in this matchup. This is a wet dream matchup up against the Buffalo Bills defense that allows the second most points to running backs on a per game basis. The biggest predicament here would be that I would expect the Bills to be up bigly in this game, and I would expect that to mean that the Texans won't be able to run the ball as much, but Woody Marks does have solid pass catching abilities, so the matchup is great here. While I do still have my, worries about Woody Marks, we've seen the upside, we've seen the big games, and this matchup has all the makings of a big game for him. Then we got Quinshawn Judkins going up against the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. This is the 19th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. Now, the Browns offense has been really tricky this season because while they've sucked ass the whole season, you can kind of talk yourself into Quinshawn Judkins, and maybe you can talk yourself into Shedeur Sanders. Now, Geno Smith is such a disgrace to the game of the NFL that this game should be close, even though the Cleveland Browns offense might be completely and utterly limp dick. Thus, they should be able to rely on Quinshawn Judkins and give him a ton of touches. So if that is how the game plays out, how I'd project it, that I think Quinshawn Judkins should see around 20 touches, and he should be able to finish as a mid-range running back too. Now we move into tier number 4, which is going to be the low-end running back twos with Chase Brown, Breece Hall, Ashton Genty, Aaron Jones, Sean Tucker, Kareem Hunt, Emmanuel Wilson, as well as Kenneth Walker. Now it's important to note that as of the recording of today's video, I don't think Bucky Irving is going to play. I am unsure if Pacheco is going to play, and I also do not think that Josh Jacobs is going to play. Now, if those things change, then we will have to adjust from there. Now, Chase Brown is ranked incredibly highly by the expert consensus rankings. They have him as the RB10, though I will note the Patriots are the worst matchup for running backs, so that does worry me. I think the offense will look better without Joe Burrow, but the fact that they don't have Jamar Chase definitely scares me, but Chase Brown is one of the classic examples of the guys on fire. He continues to play well, 3 straight games inside the top 12, so while the matchup does concern me, I think you do have to rank him still fairly enough here as the RB17. Then we got Breece Hall going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. The biggest issue for Breece Hall is just that the team fucking sucks offensively, and if you're not able to stay in the game, then Breece Hall basically becomes irrelevant. If Tyrod Taylor is able to boost up this offense, elevate the offense to being just at least, slightly above average, then Breece Hall could have a gigantic game here. Right? That is entirely possible because of how good Breece Hall is and because this is the 10th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. But it is important to understand that if Tyrod Taylor is not able to pick this offense up, if Tyrod Taylor is not able to make this offense at least remotely okay, Breece Hall could end up being a humongous bust this week. Then we got Ashton Jeanty going up against the Cleveland Browns. Now, I love Ashton Jeanty. I still do believe that Ashton Jeanty is a guy that should be highly talked about. He is one of the better running backs in the NFL, even if his statistics don't show you that. The reason why the statistics don't show you that is because Geno Smith sucks fucking dick at being a quarterback at the NFL level in 2025. It is really that simple. If they had better quarterback play, Ashton Jeanty would be a stone cold Steve Austin lock to be a top 12 running back week in and week out. But because Geno Smith is such a fucking disgrace to our game that we all love of football, it is very hard for me to give Ashton Jeanty the Gawk 9000 special, especially in a matchup that is the 5th worst matchup for running backs on a per game basis. But he should see a healthy amount of dump offs to be able to elevate him to finish inside the top 24. Then we got Aaron Jones going up against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. This is going to be a revenge game for Aaron Jones of sorts. In terms of a matchup, this is the 22nd best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. We did see the Giants running backs have great success last week up against the Packers defense. Aaron Jones is really a guy that is just always going to kind of be ranked in this range. He's not quite good enough at this point in his career for me to truly bang the drum for him as like a high-end RB2. But he should be able to finish as a lower-end RB2 week in and week out. He scored 11-plus points in 3 straight games. He clearly still has it in him. The biggest drawback to him isn't even necessarily that he's not as good as he used to be. That happens to a lot of players, right, as you get older, especially as a running back. But it has mostly to do with the fact that J.J. McCarthy just cannot be trusted. Then we move to Sean Tucker, the fucker, going up against the LA Rams. Now, a lot of people are going to rank Sean Tucker super highly this week, right? If Bucky Irving is out, people are going to be, you remember the old meme, dicks out for Harambe. It's going to be dicks out for Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker hit the Buffalo Bills with the 5-knuckle shuffle last week, 19 carries for 106 yards, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 34 yards, 3 total touchdowns as the RB2. But the problem is this week he faces the Rams, the 3rd worst matchup for running backs on a per game basis. And we talked about earlier with the Buffalo Bills, they're the 2nd best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. So while I am very much a believer in Sean Tucker, while I very much believe he could find success in this matchup, we definitely need to pump the brakes. Just because he blew the back out of the Buffalo Bills doesn't mean he's a guy that needs to be a must-start fucking high-end running back too, brother. Now we move to Kareem Hunt going up against the Indianapolis Colts. If Pacheco is back, then I don't want to touch either one of these guys with a 10-foot pole. Kareem Hunt will be the RB1 without Isaiah Pacheco. They have Brashard Smith, and a lot of people were really hyping up Brashard Smith, and I get it. I did get it, but this is Kareem Hunt's backfield if Pacheco is out. He should be able to be a reliable top 24-ish option. He has scored a touchdown or more over the last 3 games, 4 total touchdowns over that stretch. He goes up against the Colts in what should be one of the highest scoring games of the week. It's the 21st best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. So while Kareem Hunt isn't the same guy that he was when he first was on the Chiefs earlier on in his career, he's still serviceable and he still gets a lot of touches in the red zone on the goal line where your money is made in fantasy football. Then we move to Emmanuel Wilson going up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Josh Jacobs could play. Now, based on what I've read about Josh Jacobs, it seems more likely that he will return next week in week 13 up against the Detroit Lions, but he himself said he is trying to play. I will note, though, I've never heard a player that says, no, I'm not trying to come back this week, right? Every fucking player wants to play. Josh Jacobs, like Cam Scattaboo right now would roll out there in a fucking wheelchair, right, and play. If they said he could. If they said it was up to him, he would play. If it was up to Joe Burrow, he would have played 3 weeks ago, right? That is how these athletes' minds operate, okay? And that's why they're so fucking great, okay? So while it is possible Josh Jacobs returns, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, I would project him to be out. This is the 20th best matchup for running backs. So while I don't think Emmanuel Wilson's going to have great success running the ball, great success, shout out to Borat, running for like 150 yards or something crazy like maybe Josh Jacobs could do even in a tougher matchup, he should be able to find the end zone. And that is good enough to finish as a top 24 running back. Then we got Kenneth Walker III going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. In terms of a matchup, this is going to be the 7th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis. Now, I would love to just be like, you know what? Kenneth Walker was the RB9 last week. He had 16 carries for 67 yards and 3 receptions on 3 targets for 44 yards, 1 total touchdowns, the RB9 in a rough spot against the Rams. He's definitely going to do it again. I think that would be crazy to say based on what we've seen out of Kenneth Walker this season. This was his first touchdown since September. His first touchdown since September. It is almost fucking Thanksgiving. So while it was very promising to see what Kenneth Walker did, while the matchup here is ripe for the taking, would anyone be surprised if Kenneth Walker shit the bed in this game, did nothing, and Zach Charbonnet was hitting the fucking Heisman pose in the end zone with 3 touchdowns? I wouldn't be, and neither should you. Now we move into the high-end RB3s with David Montgomery as well as Alvin Kamara. Now, David Montgomery is loved like a child by Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell absolutely adores David Montgomery, though David Montgomery not very involved last week with Dan Campbell calling the plays. David Montgomery in good matchups like this up against the Giants, the 3rd best matchup, should be serviceable enough. But the floor of David Montgomery from the last 2 years with Jahmyr Gibbs is not the same as the floor this season. In prior years, he's getting you at least 10 points every single week. You don't even have to think twice about it. This year, though, like last week, we saw him score 5 points. Back at week 7, 6 points. Week 6, 8 points. Week 4, 1 fucking fantasy point. So while I am a believer in David Montgomery, and while I wouldn't be shocked if David Montgomery scored 2 touchdowns and absolutely shafted Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't think we can be as confident as we would have been a few years ago. Then we got Alvin Kamara. Now, I was an Alvin Kamara glazer in the summer. I was like, you know what? Alvin Kamara looked downright incredible last season, even with the offense being terrible. So he definitely can do it again. That hasn't been the case. He hasn't been getting a gazillion targets like last year. But prior to the bye up against the Carolina Panthers, Alvin Kamara rose from the ashes. After being downright dreadful for a majority of the season, he picked it up. He scored 1 point in week 9 and then scored 15 points in week 10 against the Panthers with 22 carries for 83 yards, 3 receptions on 3 targets for 32 yards. Now, I am not a believer in Tyler Shuck. I am not someone that thinks that Tyler Shuck is the savior of the Saints. I think he's much closer to Spencer Rattler 2.0 than he is of being the next guy. But, and there's a big but, shout out to Phoenix Marie, maybe Tyler Shuck and the offense just figured it out. Maybe they figured out that, hey, up against Kirk Cousins, we're just going to spam run the ball, because it's not like Kirk Cousins is going to lay a beat down on the New Orleans Saints defense. That's just not very likely to happen. I think it's going to be a close game, allowing the Saints to run. This is the 4th best matchup. So while deep down, starting Alvin Kamara gives me the heebie-jeebies, I think this might be another solid game for him. Then we move into tier number 6, which is going to be the mid-range RB3s with Tyrone Tracy, as well as Trey Benson and Zonovan Knight. Why do I have both Cardinals running backs in the same spot? Because if Trey Benson is to play, he's running back 28. If Trey Benson is not to play, then Zonovan Knight is running back 28. I would not play both of them in this spot, but this one feels to me like a true 50-50 on if he plays or not, which is why I include him there. Like, if Josh Jacobs was to play, he'd be inside the top 12. Just always is. If, Bucky Irving was to play, he'd be a high-end RB2. You don't wait weeks for Bucky Irving to come back, and then you rank him as like the RB21, right? That would be a little bit foolish. So, Tyrone Tracy looked great last week. 19 of 88, 4 receptions on 4 targets for 51 yards as the RB13. Now, this is still very much a annoying as fuck split share with Devin Singletary, so getting too much of a hard on after what we saw last week would be silly, especially in the 2nd worst matchup for running backs on a per game basis, but he does appear to have a nice target floor, and Jackson Dart could turn this game into a very high-scoring game where they're actually close and they can run the ball with Tyrone Tracy. Then we move to Trey Benson. Now, Trey Benson's been out for what feels like a decade at this point. He's been out since week number 4. Seems like he could play. Again, would I bet my life Trey Benson is playing? Fuck no, baby. Could he play? 100%. The matchup here up against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in Arizona is bad. It's the 4th best matchup, or the 4th worst matchup for running backs on a per game basis. So I'm going to, slow my roll. But if you waited on Trey Benson all year, he should be good enough to at least do this. And his upside is pretty significant because I really do believe heavily in Trey Benson. It's just the matchup here is very concerning. Then we got Zonovan Knight. Again, I don't like the matchup. I don't like Zonovan Knight, but no Amari DiMercado means that if Zonovan Knight is the lead back on the team, he's going to get a bunch of looks. Sure, Michael Carter will see touches as well, but he will be the guy if there is no Trey Benson. Last week, he was the RB18 with just 9 touches and a touchdown. I could see him finding pay dirt in this game, as this may be a high-scoring game, especially because even when the Cardinals are getting their ass handed to them, even when they're getting bent over a table, they just manage to somehow score 1,000,000 points late on in the game. Jacoby Brissett's like the new age Blake Bortles. He's just a garbage time goat. He's like Justin Fields from earlier on in the season. Now we move into tier number 7, which is going to be the low-end RB3s. Now, in my opinion, when you're at the top, right, you're in the tier 1, everything's going swimmingly. It's all good. You're feeling great. In tier 2, you're feeling great as well. Tier 3, things start to settle in, but you still feel good about those guys. Same with tier 4. Then you get to tier number 5, and it's like, okay, my confidence level is starting to dwindle. Then it dwindles even more to tier 6. And now it's like you're just throwing shit against the wall. And then once we get to tier number 8, it's the YOLO tier where it's like we are really just hoping something magically works. Now, Tajay Spears, in my opinion, is the best running back on this team, better than Tony Pollard. But if he's not going to guarantee me to get 10 touches every single week, how could I possibly rank him higher than this? Now, he is good enough to catch like a check down and run 80 yards directly into the end zone, just juke out 1,000,000 guys. It's not a good matchup. That was the 23rd best matchup for running backs, so this ranking feels fair. Then we got Zach Charbonnet up against the Tennessee Titans. Great matchup. Not as involved last week. But again, I could easily see the pendulum shifting back his way and him scoring multiple touchdowns this week. Then we got Rachaad White. Rachaad White has been absolutely thrown into the cuck chair, Ian Gary style, by the offense of the Buccaneers. This Sean Tucker season. So if Bucky is not there, it's going to be Sean Tucker season, and Rachaad White will pick up the scraps. So he'll finish in this range, but not a guy you're excited about. Then we got Tony Pollard going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Again, rough matchup, but he should get 10-plus touches. But they're just not as exciting of touches because he's not very explosive. Then we move to Ramondre Stevenson. Now, Ramondre Stevenson, I could see finishing very highly this week if they just pull the wool over our eyes and he is just the clear RB1 on the team. But at the same time, based on how great Travion Henderson has been and how bad Ramondre Stevenson has been, it would just make no sense for that to be the case, and that's exactly why it will end up being the case. Then we got Devin Singletary going up against the Detroit Lions. Again, rough matchup for him. He scored 10-plus points in back-to-back games. Should be able to score 10 points here, but again, I wouldn't expect him to go, and dominate the Detroit Lions defense. Then we got Monsieur Kyle Monangai going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Touchdown in back-to-back games. How repeatable is that, though? I'm not sure, because if Swift is even more healthy this week, then they might look to trickle back Kyle Monangai's touches even further. Then we got Tyler Algier. Now, Tyler Algier is legitimately like playing Russian roulette in fantasy football. Tyler Algier will either get 3 touches or he's going to get 15 touches. And regardless of how many touches he gets, he could score multiple touchdowns because they just love having Bijan do all the work, Bijan do all the dirty work, right? And then once they get on the goal line, surprise, motherfucker, it's Tyler Algier, and Tyler Algier scores the touchdowns. Very frustrating. Back-to-back decent games for Tyler Algier. But at the end of the day, Tyler Algier is nowhere near as good as Bijan. The offense is going to be worse with Kirk Cousins under center, less goal line opportunities, thus dropping him down the rankings. Now, we move to tier number 8, the YOLO RB4s for week number 12. Kenny Gainwell, the sax man. I was going to say the scat man, but he's the sax man, Kenny G. I'm a scat man. Bop, bop, bop. Shout out to Cam Scataboo. Did you guys see the streams that Cam Scataboo does? They're so funny. The one clip was so good where he's like You guys let the taco dominate you, or are you dominating the taco where you like eat how you eat the taco? What do you guys do? I think I typically turn the taco instead of let the taco dominate me. But, you know, I'm not judging you if you're letting your taco dominate you. Kenneth Gainwell going up against the Bears. If Jaylen Warren misses, we obviously shoot him up the rankings. If Jaylen Warren is in, Gainwell's not even guaranteed to get 5 touches. Then we got Byshal Tootin, Blake Corum, and Jordan, the numbers Mason. What do they mean? Byshal Tootin also banged up, listed as questionable. He has scored in 2 of the last 3 games. Will definitely bump him up my rankings if I feel more confident about his health, but still kind of more unknown right now. I probably thought earlier on in the week that he would miss. And then we got Blake Corum. Now, Blake Corum, you know, I said this in the running back starts it video, but Blake Corum is either going to get you 13 touches and score 6 points, or get 6 touches and score 3 fantasy points, right? Either way, he's not going to fucking do anything for your fantasy team. Then we got Jordan. The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Going up against the Packers. He scored last week on 6 touches for 45 yards and a touchdown. How likely is that to repeat? Not very likely. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below, like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you long time. Have a great one. As always, good boy.